We love the power and grace of athletes, artists, and high achievers with their zest and grit. But have you ever wondered how they harness their energy and get into flow? And then what do they do with the money that comes their way? I am Darren Wright, author of Financial Fitness. Join me on a fascinating journey to gain a peek into the intersection of highly successful people and everyday financial life. There will be highs and lows and relatable flow stories for you.
Welcome to Financial Flow. I'm your host, Darren Wright, author of the upcoming book, Financial Fitness. I've been advising successful families over 30 years on how to improve their financial position, which improves their overall lives. What became obvious over the years is that there's so much more needed to achieve and maintain elite financial fitness rather than the standard out-of-the-box traditional financial advice. This show is not about the economy or investments. I'm here to take you on a journey to learn how you can apply the success strategies of elite athletes and other successful individuals to make smart choices with your money and achieve financial grounding, balance, and your peak financial flow. All right, welcome Allison Schmitt, four-time Olympian, current 200-meter freestyle American Olympic record holder since 2009, 2016 and 20 captain of the U.S. Olympic swim team. She has won 25 medals in major international competitions, 13 gold, 9 silver, and 3 bronze. She was the captain of the University of Georgia 2013 National Championship team. Go Bulldogs.
Go Dogs.
Yeah. Born in Pittsburgh, grew up in Michigan, and she's in the middle of 5 siblings. And you started swimming at age 8. Is that right?
I started 9, almost 10. I got into swimming because for water safety around 5, but I joined a swim team 9, almost 10 years old. So unfortunately, any swimmers listening out there, I didn't get to do the 25 in competition, which I wish I could have, but you know what? I think it helped with the longevity of my career.
Yeah, so you had talked about actually quitting back then. What were some of your thoughts? And I'm sure that wasn't the only time you thought about quitting.
Yeah, I was a kid, a middle child. I wanted to be seen and I wanted to be heard. And I was very fortunate that our parents let us do whatever sport we wanted to do as long as we committed for that season, had good grades, went to church, and played an instrument. So we all did piano. And we could do any sport we wanted. My favorite was soccer, but my oldest sister, she was not into the ball sports, so she started swimming. And like I said, I was a kid that wanted to do everything, so I swam as well. I went to practice 3 times a week and didn't really have that close connection, friendship with the other teammates that were there 5 or 6 times a week. So I swam through the season. I met one friend at the end of the season, and I got in the car after the meet and I told my sister that I met a friend. She asked me what her name was and I had no idea. And that was the whole reason I went back for the next season.
Oh, really? Okay. And why did you pick swimming over the other sports? I know that your siblings, I mean, they're all pretty successful high achievers. What was it about swimming that made you want to pick that sport?
You're going to laugh at this, but thankfully, swimming is a non-cut sport, which is why I fell into it. Like I said, I was a huge soccer player. I thought I was the next Mia Hamm, had Mia Hamm everything, Barbie dolls, everything. But I got cut from the soccer team I want to make. And so at 12 years old, I decided that, okay, I'm splitting my time between soccer and swimming right now. So let me put all my time into swimming.
Did getting cut have an impact on you from soccer to swimming?
I mean, that's a hard question. I guess looking back, was a great, I'm thankful that I got cut and was put into swimming. But I am very grateful for what sport has taught me overall and the values that it's taught me. I think it's helped me be successful through my college career, I'm in my master's right now, and helping me be successful in that part as well.
So what you've won a lot of medals, obviously, in swimming. What do you think is, if you think back, what was the most satisfying medal that you won?
Ooh. So when I think about my Olympic medals, I don't have a favorite because they all have different meanings. But I really think I hold on to that gold medal of the 200 freestyle in London because that was planned so far in advance. I remember in 2008, I got ninth. I swam individually in the 200 free in Beijing 2008. I was ninth by 1/100th, and I cried on the deck. Embarrassingly, I was that kid that was crying on the deck because I wasn't happy with my performance. And so I used those 4 years remembering that feeling of the defeat and being upset to motivate me for the next 4 years so that I could be on that podium. I don't think I had my goals set on the gold medal, but I just had my goals set in making that final and doing the best that I could in that final. And all that work put in throughout those years, being on that top of the podium and hearing your national anthem, it's something that I won't forget.
Wow. I mean, I got to imagine that's incredible. I remember watching you swim and how fun it was to watch you. I mean, I don't know what it is about the Olympics, but swimming is seems to be something that just grabs the American public to watch you guys do your thing out there.
Yeah, the support. I mean, even I remember on the podium looking to my right and seeing my family cheering, that my family was able to travel and cheer me on, and looking to the left and seeing all of Team USA and seeing that, and just knowing when I'm looking at that American flag that it's not about me, it's not about everyone there, but it's about everyone back home in the US as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. You talked about using that defeat in Beijing to fuel you to success in London. So break that down a little bit, because, you know, when it comes to finance, there's a lot of defeats that everybody has along the way. You know, you maybe pick an investment that isn't ideal, or maybe you make a mistake financially, and you just have to keep going. Mm-hmm. And so talk about that with your defeat and what was going through your mind over the next 4 years, and how you use that as fuel to reach your peak.
It is really broken down. I'm glad you brought that point across, because it wasn't just from 2008 to 2012. It was the years between. And I think I could have sat there in 2008, been upset, and just been done with the sport. Been like, okay, I'm going to go to college, and then 4 years at college and just retire from there. But I had that drive inside of me, and I had that motivation inside of me. So I'm not saying from 2008 to 2012 it was all uphill. There was definitely some ebbs and flows in there, but it was just that dedication that I had within, that self-motivation I had within, to continue working towards that goal. And if I really break that down, 2009 in Rome is when I broke the American record. So the first year I did well. If I go to 2011 Worlds, I got 6th place. I was first at the 150 and ended up getting 6th place. I then ended up redshirting my senior year, moving to Baltimore. So that was the best decision for me, is to stop schooling, take a break, and move to Baltimore, where I had previously trained with Bob Bowman, who's famously known as Michael Phelps' coach, and just having that team that's going for one goal really helped me to stay focused for that year. And I was able to really focus on what I need to do every day to get better, and to be able to see that at the end of those 4 years, and see that success made all the work and all the obstacles within those 4 years really worth it.
Yeah, I bet. So tell me about that in terms of everything you pulled together, because you had to be organized, you had to be disciplined with your time, you had nutrition, you had to have like a mental balance, I would assume. Like, tell me about pulling all that together for yourself during that period of time in Baltimore specifically.
Yeah, it's definitely about understanding what I could do. So I could go in every day doing the best I could do. And with the knowledge that I had, the best that I can do in these specific areas, such as you said, nutrition, recovery, training. So I'm going in, I'm showing up, and I'm doing the best that I can do. But I'm also relying on my support system. So I'm relying on my trainers for nutrition. I'm relying on recovery, masseuse, trainers. I'm relying on my coach for giving me that training program and that regimen. And I'm also relying on my family, my friends for that support and that understanding when I'm not able to go home for Thanksgiving. I'm able to go home for Christmas for one day. I know that those are family events, but I was sacrificing that time to train for my goals. And so I really understand the support system and relying on others, but doing the best you can do with what you're good at. And at that time, I was good at training. I was good at swimming, and I was going to do the best that I could do in my own training to get to that goal.
So it was very important for you to be able to delegate and have a team of experts around you, it sounds like.
Oh, yes, for sure. And that's why I said earlier, when I'm standing on that podium, I know that it's not just me standing on that podium. That gold medal is not just mine, but it's the whole teams that had a part in helping me get there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you had mentioned to me previously a story about Bob Bowman and helping you achieve your goals. And if you recall, it was, I think you had a bunch of 100-yard sets or meter sets, and you did a specific time, and you're really proud about it. And then you got out looking for a girl from Bob, and he said, now you got to do it every time or something. Tell us that story.
Oh, that was actually, so that was when I was 16, 17. So that was actually before Beijing.
Okay.
And at that age, I had just hit nationals for the first time. I know that's late for a lot of people out there, but to me, I was training in that group, and so it's long course meters. I know a lot of people don't know times, but I'm going 104s, and I'm like, this is great. I'm going 104s, hold 8 of them at 104s. I get out, I go to the bathroom, I come back, and Bob's asking me about what I was holding. And I was like, I was holding 104s. He looks at me and he goes, why aren't you under a minute? And I'm like, I thought I was 104s are pretty good. And he goes, get in and go under a minute. And I was like, okay. I jumped in the water and I go a 57. And I think that was him saying that gave me belief that I could be better, that we can hit another level. And we just have to keep training to hit that level and stay consistent in that level. And throughout my career, I can look back and say when I was at my best, I was the most consistent. And that consistency is huge, no matter if you have those downfalls or the highs, just staying consistent in what got you to where you are today.
Okay, so dig a little deeper on that in terms of Bob telling you to get under a minute, you got 57, and then what was going on in your head moving forward after you did that?
Belief, I would say. I'd probably say belief in just that understanding that you can't put a limit on yourself, that life happens how it is, and you're the driver of that. So you are in control of how hard you push and what you push in. But there really are no limits to what we can achieve.
Yeah, amen to that. I am a big believer in the saying green and growing or ripe and rotting, especially when it comes to goal setting. You had mentioned to me something previously about setting goals. And a friend of yours that was swimming in the faster lane next to you, and like one of your little goals was just to be able to swim with your friend. So talk about that in the context of goals, because, when it comes to finance, we'll have like these big, hairy, audacious goals. You want to do X. You want to have a second home on the beach or something like that. But there's the incremental steps of what you need to do to get there, you know, the blocking, the tackling, and the day-to-day. So tell me about how you have set big goals, but also little goals, and your mindset as a, you know, famous gold Olympic swimmer, and how you've done that over your career so far.
It's funny you say it that way, because I can see it in the athletic world so much, and it's little kids saying, I want to go to the Olympics. Well, at 10 years old, you're not going to be going to the Olympics. There's a lot of steps in between. And if I sat here today and I had $100 in my bank account and I was like, I want $1 million, like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I do too. But it's those steps in between. And so in the athletic world, it's those little steps in between and setting those little goals, but also celebrating those little goals, that you achieve. Because I know, as us being humans, we like to celebrate. It's keeps that motivation going. It keeps that hunger alive within ourselves. And so in the sport of swimming, setting those little goals and celebrating those little goals makes you hungry for more. And so if I sit here and say, I want to make nationals. Okay, I made nationals, celebration. I want to win nationals, celebration. I want to make the Olympic trials, celebration. I want to win Olympic trials, celebration. And those stepping stones to get to where your final goal is. And for me, I'm very grateful that it was at the top of the podium at the Olympics. I don't think I have grasped what that means, but because to me, it was the little goals that led me to that big goal.
So tell me about the little goal with your friend trying to swim. I swim in masters occasionally. Lately, I've been terrible getting in the pool. It's been cold in Phoenix, but just been kind of a wimp. But we had the monster lane, we called it, and down at Phoenix Swim Club, you know, at Phoenix Country Day. And there's always former collegiate swimmers swimming over there. And I actually haven't even had a goal of getting over there because it just seems too aggressive, but just getting one lane is oftentimes a big goal, moving up one lane. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that story where you had a friend in one lane faster and you just wanted to be able to swim with her.
Yeah, so like you were saying, it's just climbing up that ladder to the better lane, as you would like to say, the better lane. And everyone knows that, whether it's the white elephant in the room, there's always something better or someone better that you're aiming for. And so for me I want to say I was in my teenage years at that time, and I was the slow kid still, and I was the end of the slow lane. And as you know, being a swimmer, you hate when people touch your feet. And when you swim fast up to someone, you just touch their feet. And so I would swim up. That was my game. I would swim up and I would touch their feet. So I'd have to go in front of them. And eventually I was moving up lanes. And I used that as a game. And so that was my everyday stepping stone. So every day I would want to try and touch someone's foot to get higher in the lane or to get into the next lane. And I'm huge into games like that. I think work can get very boring. I like to keep things interesting. I like to keep things fun. And I also know how hard you have to work in order to achieve your goals. So I have combined them. Ever since I was younger, I've been able to combine them and understand that, okay, if I look at this little picture, what can I do in this little picture to achieve a bigger goal? And I think that's, looking back on that story, that's exactly what I was doing without understanding that I was setting that little goal each day to try and get in a better lane so that I could swim with my best friend who was at the top of the lane in the faster lanes. You created the gamification of goal setting before that was even a word. Thank you. Should I copyright that?
Yeah, you should. So you have a lot of high achievers in your family. Your brother swam for Pitt. You have twin sisters that played on the USA hockey team.
Yeah, they played 4 years at Ohio State University.
Okay.
the Ohio State, especially us coming from Michigan.
Yeah. And then they also lettered in basketball and swimming.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what is it, do you think, that the way you were raised with all your successful siblings that caused you to have so much success?
I actually wonder that same thing. As I'm getting older and wanting to start a family, I'm looking back and like, how did my parents do that? It's pretty amazing. I mean, I think they just instilled in us from such a young age to get the work done before play. And if you can get that work done while playing, you go ahead. But setting that standard that you're going to commit and you're going to do the best you can when you commit. And if you don't like it after that season, yes, then you can quit. But really instilling those positive traits of setting a standard for ourselves. And I remember a few weeks ago looking back and thinking I never got in trouble for grades. I was very high achieving. I wanted A's and B's. I mean, my older sister, perfect score in her SAT, like National Merit Scholar. And it's just like we never got yelled at for our grades. We never got in trouble for our grades. But for some reason, and I don't know back when we were under 5 what it was like, but for some reason we all had that standard inside of us that it's not like if I bring a report card home that's under an A or B, my parents are going to yell at me. But I think innately I would be upset with myself because I didn't do the best that I could because I was too focused on something else.
Do you think that was hardwired into you or more your parental upbringing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a little bit of both. I think, yes, maybe we are with that competitive nature hardwired, but I think it was very fostered and it was developed in that upbringing. I think if my parents are very removed and they didn't care about our report cards and they didn't take us to our practices, we wouldn't have cared as much, but they showed care as much as we showed care, which made it easier for success.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so right now you're coming off an injury, double surgery. Is that right?
Yeah, I had my first surgery ever at 32 years old this past September for my left hip. And then I had my right hip the end of December.
How you feeling?
Really well. Like I said, I didn't know what surgery was, and I have a whole new respect for people who went through surgery, but more so for their caretakers. I mean, my mom was an absolute saint in taking me to the bathroom and me waking her up at 2 a.m. to go to the bathroom, and I put on my shoes. I mean, I couldn't dress myself. It's a hard thing at 32 years old to so much rely on someone else when you can't even get dressed yourself. But then again, I'm sure it was not easy for my mom to be taking care of her 32-year-old daughter. I just have so much respect for people who are caretakers and for people who are differently abled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of, I guess, introspection is valuable. I mean, you had to have your mom help you out for a period of time. And, when it comes to finances, I think about that a lot. You have to be your own steward of your finances. And the term I like to use is you are the captain of your ship and the master of your fate. And so you have to be responsible, but there could be times later in life where we may need some assistance because we're either physically or mentally not able to take care of ourselves, or maybe our parents one day will be like that. And so that's all part and parcel of it too. So having that experience where someone actually had to take care of you at 32, maybe that'll give you some insight down the road too.
I love that analogy. So thank you.
So what does a typical day look like for you when you're training, when you're in the middle of training? What does that look like for Allison Schmitt?
So it depends on what part of training we're in. When we go to Colorado at altitude, there are times we were swimming 3 times a day and doing a dry land or a lift on top of that. So that's 4 workouts in a day. And
how many yards or meters are you doing every day?
I would say max we're doing 16,000. Minimum on like the single days, and this is minimum, would be around, depending on the training phase, I would say the minimum would be around 6,000.
Wow. And like, how many calories are you taking down?
So that's crazy, because I know that there's a lot of controversy around that. And there's a lot of Michael Phelps was eating all these calories, on this training day. But I think that being an elite swimmer, we're more efficient in the water. So if you took someone off the street and put them into our workout, they would burn a lot more calories than we're burning, because we're more efficient in the water.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to use the term, you're like sleek dolphins, just kind of cutting through the water versus like a shark kind of thrashing.
I mean, I would love to feel like a dolphin.
So Michael Phelps, as you know, you swam at the pool that I swim at occasionally. And I was in there once, and I swear he took like 3 strokes and got all the way across the pool. And I'm like trying not to look like I'm swimming hard, but I was really trying to, swim my best, because he's literally in the lane next to me. So yeah, that efficiency, I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, efficiency in 30-something years of mastering.
And do you think that when you do retire from swimming that you'll keep swimming, or do you never want to put your toe into the water again?
I love swimming. Like I said, I love what swimming has taught me, what sport has taught me. And I just have a lot of appreciation, kind of what you said at the beginning of this too. I love the sun. So I love when it's warm out, when the sun's beating down on you, but just the overall health I get from swimming, and both physically and mentally, plays a big role on my day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having that vitamin D from the sun, just being in the water. I mean, it's a friend of mine calls it his church, just being in the water, but I mentally do love it too. What do you, when it comes to swimming, how has that helped you, not just physically, but also emotionally? Talk a little bit about that. Or mentally, emotionally.
I think that swimming allows you to be in your own mind. I mean, you're essentially swimming in a box back and forth for 2 hours. So there's a lot of thinking involved in that. But while you're thinking and your mind could go elsewhere, it's also very important to stay focused and work on those little technique things. Every day isn't a great training day. Like everything in life, there's ebbs and flows. You could be having an off day and not training at your best, but making sure that you're able to focus in on those days and pick a few things that you can focus on. For instance, if you're not training the best, and you're not hitting the times you want, what can you focus on? And in terms of swimming, you can focus on your flip turns, you can focus on your streamlines, you can focus on the way you're pulling, or your kick. And so pick something that you can focus on, that's something little that you can get a benefit out of that training day.
Again, the gamification.
I guess I've never really put a term to it.
You and Michael Phelps have spoken publicly about your battles with depression. Tell me a little bit about that, and how that's played an impact on your life.
So I was feeling quote unquote different coming back from 2012 Olympics, which is highlighted as my most successful Olympics. And I never really understood mental health. So this was back 2012. I never understood it. I never really knew what it was about. And I knew that I was very grateful for my life, coming from a great family, great education, great success, like in my sport, all those things. I felt like I was complaining if I could say my true feelings inside. And so everyone wanted to see these medals. Everyone was telling me how lucky I was to have these medals, how they wish they were me. And at that time, I was like, can someone please hear me? Can someone please understand me? You can have these medals. Like, I just want my happiness back. So I didn't really know how to grasp with that. And it took me 2.5 years to finally ask for help. And I was at a breaking point, and completely just broke down in January of 2015. And again, I was embarrassed about it. I thought that, like, how can I be going through something with mental health? I have all these great things. Like, I feel bad for the people who are worse off than me. And so it took until May 2015 when, unfortunately, my cousin committed suicide a week after her 17th birthday.
So sorry.
Thank you. It's definitely something that doesn't get easier with time, but it helps to spread her story and allow people allow people to know that's not the only answer. And that if I could look back we could go back in time and she can be alive and see how many people showed up at her funeral from sporting teams, from people she competed against, from school, from the community, from family. It was just amazing to see how many lives she touched. And I think with her not being here on Earth, unfortunately, the best way to deal with that is speaking about it and allowing people to know that it is okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to isolate. And I know that the hardest step is to ask for help, but it is the best tool in your toolbox to have, is to ask for that help, which is what inspired me to go back to school and get my master's in social work so that I can work with athletes in the mental health field and help them know that these are normal thoughts, these are normal feelings, and we can work through these together.
Yeah, and that's amazing that you're going to be doing that work. Are you doing some of that work right now?
Yeah, so with my master's, we've had internships. So I've had 2 years of internship. My first year of internship was counseling at Arizona State General Population. My second internship, with just a semester, I worked at a behavioral health hospital. And now this internship that I'm finishing up school with is Ath Mindset. It's in the Bay Area. We do telehealth with universities, with high school students. And it's been rewarding to me to help others through their journey. And it's not me telling, as a therapist, it's not me telling them how to live their life, but it's that exploration together that I can understand their story and help them figure out on their own what direction for them to go into. Yeah.
So are you getting any kind of feedback from people in the community, other athletes, talking to you and opening up about some of the struggles they've had?
Yeah, I think that in the past 5 years, there's been a huge shift of athletes coming out and talking publicly about their struggles, which is huge. I think that if you look at it in terms of a needle moving around, a circle, we have slightly moved that needle into destigmatizing the negativity around mental health. But I believe that there's a lot more that we have to do in order to make a change. And that first step has been taken, but I believe that we have to continue to really work at that to really destigmatize that negativity around mental health and allow others to know that being vulnerable isn't a weakness, but it can help you succeed not only in your performance, but in every other areas of your life.
Well, is it Simone Biles, the one that came out and took a step back during the Olympics?
Yes.
From competing?
Yeah.
Are you guys friends? Do you speak?
Yeah. So Team USA is huge, and I definitely know Simone. She's awesome. We've had many interactions being from Team USA. So just being able to hear that from such a high profile athlete and another Team USA athlete is pretty cool. But I have not actually spoke to her since that's happened. But just seeing that in media like you have has been pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, in the old day, it was kind of like, oh, just rub some dirt on it. You're fine. Don't, what are you doing? But yeah, it's come a long way, and thank goodness it has. And it's really cool that people like you and others are doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, really making an impact. Does swimming help you deal with, I guess, depression?
So this is a twofold question, which is actually really funny you asked that. So a lot of people have come to me and said, well, is swimming the cause? Is performance the cause? And I believe full-heartedly no. I think swimming has saved my life, and having that structure has saved my life, and having in my darkest times, knowing that I still have a responsibility to show up for my teammates, not necessarily for me, but for my teammates on those hard days, and understanding that I made that commitment to my teammates and to my team to show up. So I think having that was the only constant in my life at that point. I was going through graduating college. I was moving to a different state, and there was just so much juggle going on outside my life that swimming was the constant. That ever since a little kid to where I was in that stage, it was a complete constant in a safe space. And so I really credit swimming to saving my life. At the same time, I really do respect when people do have to step away. I think everyone's situation is unique to themselves, whether it's using medication, stepping away from sport, seeing a therapist, whatever that looks like for them. I think everyone's story is different, but just understanding as human beings that to be compassionate and to be kind and to be non-judgmental towards other people's stories.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different ways that people approach it now. And in our last podcast, we had Dr. Courtney Hunt on, and she was talking a lot about the benefits of sunlight, which we get obviously when we're out swimming, but in particular in the morning and in the evening, getting back on your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And I had this interesting interaction. So we had that podcast, and then literally 3 days later, I was climbing Camelback Mountain one morning at sunrise, which I like to do, see the sun come up. And I met this individual, and sometimes you just decide, well, I'm going to engage in a conversation. Sometimes you're not. And for whatever reason, I decided, all right, I'm going to engage with this guy in a conversation. And he is a scientist that has been studying light and the impact on our mitochondrial DNA, which is also what Dr. Hunt talks about. But he actually started a business, and he works particularly with athletes and NHL players, helping them create a blue light shield, so that you're not taking in too much of the blue light, and also combat veterans and helping them, because there's a correlation between not having the proper light exposure and depression and PTSD, and also athletes not performing at their best. And so it was just fascinating to me, because I ended up talking to this guy on the ascent up Camelback Mountain, and we were just talking about this. And I'm also reading a book right now, from someone else that's talking about these things. So sometimes the universe kind of works in these ways, bring this message to you. But I just find it interesting that, there's obviously pharmaceuticals that can help you, therapy, like you mentioned, and this new approach to light and our devices, and how really over the last, call it 25 years, we have the cell phone and the iPad, and we're looking at these things, and at night, and sometimes it's the first thing we look at in the morning, and then sometimes it's the last thing that we look at night. And it's really impacting athletes and their performance and their mental wellness. Are you familiar with any of this? Have you heard any of these kind of stories or this research that's been going on?
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to applaud you, because I think that's a huge thing of within yourself, of being open to other perspectives. And you, even just saying that everything kind of lines up. It's crazy how everything lines up, but that's also you being open to that. And if you weren't open to that, I don't think you would have talked to that guy up on Camelback Mountain. So I applaud you for that.
Oh, thanks.
But I definitely, like we talked about at the very beginning, performance comes down to recovery, to nutrition, to workouts, and all of that's tied in together. So sleep is part of that recovery. A whole nother aspect that we've got in the past 10 years is the social media. The access to, and I don't even say the light exposure of that, but I do wear blue light glasses, especially around some meets, when I'm on my phone, just to make sure.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
there you go.
Just to make sure. And I get made fun of sometimes for it, because they're like the big ones with like the yellow tint. But it's definitely, social media is a whole nother factor into that. And if you have an off day, whatever sport you play, you're a swimmer, you're a basketball player, and you have one off time, you're definitely going to hear about that on social media. All those people that are sitting watching, all those people that are haysayers out there, they are going to hate on you behind a screen. And then not understanding that, yes, athletes are humans too, and athletes have feelings. And so if I go back and I look at social media after an off day, after a hard day, after a loss, and I look at that social media, that is a lot of negative thoughts and negativity about myself. And if I'm reading those out loud, I'm more likely to start believing those if I continually repeat them of what someone else is saying. So I think it's a crazy question, because I definitely think it's very important to not be on your phone around sleep time. And it's also important to not really read those negative thoughts about yourself, because once we do read those, we get that in our minds, and our minds are a very powerful tool that we can spiral at any time, unfortunately.
Yeah, no doubt. I've been trying to practice the replacement method, where you have a negative thought, just replace it with a positive thought, but I actually use a 3 times multiple. So it really takes 3 positive thoughts to replace 1 negative. And if you really think about it, it's that idea of being grateful in a way too. Like you could plug that in if you're grateful of something, but that's also in essence being positive. But like, I don't know, I'm going to fail at this podcast. Well, say, I've got this going for me, this going for me, this going for me, this going for me. So, that, but do you think you should avoid social media, or just be able to manage it? Because there's 2 schools of thought. Some people say, well, you should just avoid situations. I don't think that's true. I think you should really just learn how to let it flow by you. You can't go through your entire life avoiding things. If something happens to you, that's not who you are. That's a thing over there. But how do you feel? Should you avoid social media, or should you just learn how to manage it and let it flow by you like a cloud and be mentally tough? What are your thoughts there?
I am huge on education. I think even speaking to you and speaking about finances, it's about the education. It's about understanding. It's about mastering the finances. And that's the same thing with social media. And it's all individualized. It's understanding yourself, understanding if, okay, I can read these negative things and use it as a motivational factor. I can read these negative thoughts and have them fly past me, not even think twice about them. I can read these negative thoughts and I'm going to internalize all those negative thoughts. So it can be any one of those. It can be anything in between that. It can be something completely different. So it's all individualized. I believe education is the biggest tool around that, because if we're able to educate society on what you're talking about, distortion, or distortions, thinking of in distortions, I guess cognitive distortions, it's really important to understand and recognize a cognitive distortion, and learn about that, then to internalize that. So if we're able to have the education around the cognitive distortions and understand that, we'll maybe get to our goal of, okay, I can read my social media after games or after meets and not take those comments personally to myself and call myself a failure because someone else is telling me I failed to make the Olympic team. Okay, yes, you might have failed to make the Olympic team, but that does not mean as a person you are a failure.
Yeah, well said. Allison, when you reflect back on all of your accomplishments, what is the one word you would use to describe your success?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, man, you got me thinking here. I would say it's a mixture between consistency and support. And I say those two things because support, because I know that it's as individualized as they say swimming is. Swimming is a team sport. Like I said at the very beginning, I'm on that podium and it's not my gold medal. It's not me sitting up there, but it's everyone who helped me get to where I am and to get to that point. So I think support is one word that I would use, but consistency. And when I say consistency, it's all of life is ebbs and flows, whether it's education, whether it's finances, whether it's your sport, whatever it is, there's ebbs and flows in every part of life. And understanding that the highs, yes, let the highs be highs and lows be lows, but let's not sit in those highs. Let's not sit in those lows, but let's find that consistent factor that we're in control of to help us reach that end goal and not get too high if we reach a goal, but not too low if we don't reach that goal by a certain deadline.
Yeah, that's well said. I like the words consistency and I like the word support. For example, it's my belief that you got to have support in most things in life. Mm-hmm. Sport, finance, you need to have the right people around you to help you get to your goals. And you also have to have consistency. And, like an example with consistency, so I'm maybe answering the question for you, but with consistency, people can get in their head about investing. They're up, they're down. Maybe they, the last, year or so has been pretty difficult to make money out there, And so it's my belief that staying consistent is really important to getting to the end goal. And I like to use an example as if you look back to the Dow Jones Industrial Average as a barometer for investing. In the year 2000, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was at 10,500. And then 10 years later, in 2010, it was at 10,500 again. So it basically did a little up and down, but it really had no gain over that decade. And some people called it the lost decade. But if you look at from where it was in 2010 to today, I haven't looked today, but let's just say it's almost around 30,000. So it went from 10,500 in 2010 to 30,000, 3 times as much in about 12, 13 years. Mm-hmm. So if someone was just consistent about putting money aside, then they ended up getting to their goal. But if they got caught up in the short term, they quit, for example, then they probably didn't get to their goal. So all that being said, in your mind, what do you think consistency and support can do for you with your own personal finances as you look ahead and you get ready to join the workforce?
I think for me, it would be support. I know that my expertise is in sport, and my expertise is now in social work as I'm getting my master's. I'm not an expert in finances. Now, I know some basic information. I know not to just go spend all my money, or I know to save the money, but I don't know what to do with that. So I would say for me, that would be looking for support. And like we talked about with social media, there's a lot of people out that can say quote unquote facts about finances. But are you really a master in finances? Are you really educated in finances? Or are you just putting that out there and then I'm not checking my facts as a reader and believing those so-called facts? Or am I going to understand that I can go to an expert? I can go to someone who does this for a living, who has really studied finances, and use that information to best sculpt what's best for me. So I really look at using support in that because I know that I'm not good at finances, and I'll own that I'm not good at finances. That doesn't mean that 10 years down the line I might not be good at finances, but that also is in my control to find that information that is from an expert and not just from some person sitting on the couch eating 20 bags of chips and not working.
All right. Well, and so I always like to ask kind of a question to wrap things up here in terms of, as you think back to being on the road in the Olympics, it had to be some pretty fun times, I would think, when you're traveling. So where have you been? London, Beijing?
So the Olympics were Beijing, London, Rio de Janeiro, and Tokyo.
So you've been to 4?
4, yes. And between each Olympics is a world championship, 2 world championships, and a Pan-Pacific championship. So right. Even though TV picks up swimming once every 4 years, we still have our big championships every single year. But my favorite place that I've been to, and it's crazy looking back on my career because I've been to, I can't even count how many different cities and countries around the world. But we saw a lot of hotels and pools. Not much more than that in those countries. There are a few times that we get a day every now and then to go explore the country. But I really want to go back to Italy. I was in a camp before World Championships that were in Rome in 2009, and we were in a little town called Riccione, Italy. And I thought it was so cool, that they have siestas and sleep for 2 hours during the day. But it was also pretty crazy how at 9 or 10 o'clock at night when they're at restaurants and eating, and there's 2-year-olds running around, and you're like, back in America, those 2-year-olds are asleep at 7. Yeah. So I just love immersing myself in the different cultures and understand the different cultures. So I would love to travel, and I would love to go everywhere in the world, but 2 places I really am looking to go, especially in the next year, are Italy and Greece, which I've never been to Greece at all.
Do you have actual plans to go there yet?
I don't have flights, but I look quite a lot, and I'm really big on looking on Instagram to see, who's traveled to these places and what advice do you have?
Okay. And with all of your different destinations in the Olympics, I don't know, you don't have to mention any names, but what's the most outrageous thing that you've seen along the way in your journeys to the Olympics?
I think the most eye-opening event I saw at the Olympics, and this one might stand up because it was one of the first events. So this was in 2008, and I had been out of the country one other time before the 2008 Olympics, and I will never forget leaving the dining hall. And in the Olympic Village, you cannot bring your backpack into the dining hall because they don't want you to take food out. They eat as much food as you want. It's all you can eat, but eat as much food as you want. And I will never forget seeing a different country have 4 stacks of trays, and they were just devouring food. I mean, this guy was maybe 80 pounds. And I was like, that's a lot of food. And at that time in Beijing, they also had these Snicker bars. And that's the only thing you could really put in your pocket and take out. Mm-hmm. And I watched this guy eat, devouring this food, and then stuffing Snicker bars in his pockets. And it just blew my mind that some of these people are here to survive. And it made me really grateful for our country and for the opportunities I have, and knowing that when I go to the Olympics, I'm competing to be the best in the world. And I'm not going to the Olympics just to try and survive. So it made me really appreciate being an American, but also gave me a different perspective that I might be able to help other countries and really spread that education that let's try and make this a fair playing field, and allow you the opportunities that I've been so fortunate to have. Yeah,
well said. Amazing. Well, Allison, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I hope today's podcast brought you all a step closer to achieving your peak financial flow. And you can pre-order my upcoming book called Financial Fitness on our website. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely need to order that. Like I said, I am not the master in finance. I wish I was, but I'll turn for you for my support in that one.
Sounds awesome. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison Schmitt, for being here today, and thank you all for listening. We hope that you were informed and inspired to move even more into your financial flow for peak success. If you liked the show today, we'd really appreciate it if you rated and reviewed us on whatever channel you're listening on. And most importantly, make it an awesome day. Take care.